Now, as 2025 draws to a close, Zambia reflects on a year defined by moments that tested institutions and has reshaped national debate. It has also exposed both the country's vulnerabilities and its resilience. From environmental disasters and energy reforms to national mourning, unusual criminal cases, and far-reaching constitutional changes, 2025 produced headlines that dominated Diamond media. From Diamond Breakfast to the Diamond Live this day and Costa. Tonight on Costa, we reflect on the major stories that have shaped Zambia's political, social and economic landscape for the year 2025 and the critical questions they continue to raise as the nation looks ahead to 2026, which promises to be a big political year ahead of the polls in August of 2026. This evening, I'm privileged to be joined by colleagues who host these current affairs shows in Cheswa, Kapasa, and Andrew Mwansa with This Day and Diamond Live, and also Malama Mukonde from the Diamond Breakfast. Colleagues, thank you so much for joining me on Costa as we dissect and break the year 2025 into perspective.
Thanks so much, CVO, for inviting us for Costa cross-examination.
It's a great pleasure to be here.
Good evening. It's a great pleasure to be on Costa tonight.
Cheswa, Yasamondi under cross-examination. Let's begin with the big environmental catastrophe, the Kafue River poison. Now, on 18th February, a tailings dam operated by Sino Metals Leach Zambia collapsed, releasing tens of millions of liters of toxic mining waste into the Kafue, Mwambashi and Chambishi River. Now, the spill contaminated water sources, killed fish and wildlife, disrupted water supply to major towns, including Kitwe, Kalulushi, and other surrounding areas. Now, this crisis dominated national discourse for months, triggering emergency response investigations and public outrage. Concerns are persisting when the U.S. Embassy ordered American personnel to withdraw from areas near the river. Now, colleagues, I know that this story was extensively covered by our bureau staff on the Copper Belt. Many guests, including Zem and other NGOs on the Diamond Breakfast. Let me start with you, Malama. What engagements did you have on this story insofar as interviews on the Diamond Breakfast and your reflections?
Oh, my reflections on this one. As an environmental head myself, it was quite the shocker once this story broke. But it was interesting to speak to people, experts within the mining sector, health personnel to speak into this so that people understand the gravity. If it was those also within the aquamarine space, talking to people who deal with soils and just how deep this problem is even today. It may not be as quiet, and I think it's a little disappointing that, and I think I'll throw this one to members of the public, that they did not react the way such a story, with the magnitude that such a story carries. I think we needed to see more from them. I think the media did its best. I remember, I think we didn't explain, it was trending. But the reaction from the people for such a story that will affect us for decades to come, for me, is where things really were just... I was just dumbfounded. I just can't believe that even up to today, people are just not as invested in this story for how grave it is. So for me, I think, it was great to have these conversations and to try and bring out information to people and show them how serious this was. But the reaction from the people was just not there. I feel like people were just not angry enough. They were just not willing to put the people responsible, the government, in the limelight where this story is concerned. Yeah, and we still haven't done enough.
Yeah, but just
Andrew, as you come in, others feel that government, and when I talk about government, it's the government of the Republic of Zambia, we sort of underplayed this. This particular instance has moved to what I may term geopolitical tension or diplomatic rows. Just last week, U.S. Ambassador to Zambia, Michael Gonzalez, talking about the U.S. reconsidering their aid position. Remember that there was a $1.5 billion, is about $2 billion grant to Zambia that was discussed towards the health sector. But they're saying they feel that government stance or its relationship with China is really something that the U.S. government is not impressed over, and they feel that their investors and their companies that want to invest in Zambia are not getting fair treatment in line with how the Chinese are being protected. Do we see ourselves caught up in an economic diplomatic role in that we are slapping the Chinese on the wrist? Andrew?
To a larger extent, I agree with you, Silvio. I think this story has put us at a very compromised, place as a country, Zambia. Obviously, our relations with China and our relations with the U.S. Are dependent on how historically, we've been dealing with them. From the time that this, story erupted, one of the key diplomatic country that we have diplomatic relations with that has come out so strong is the U.S. And the U.S. believe so much that there's a sense in which Zambia has underplayed the impact, of the tailing dams, and the effect that they have on human life and animal life. And they've been issuing statements. In fact, part of what that issued as part of the statements that issued was that they are warning the citizens of the U.S. That live along the banks of Chambeshi River and part of Kitwe, to vacate those places because of the fact that the water around that place was contaminated. We saw the reaction that came from the Zambian government. The Zambian government reacted in a manner that people didn't expect to react. In fact, you saw a group of government officials, I think there were about 5 to 8, that held a press briefing to just assure the people that the water around Kitwe is not contaminated. We did see the PS from Information and Media, Mr. Tabo Kawana, visiting one of the visiting one of the areas in Kitwe and drinking part of the tap water to show that this water is not as contaminated as the US tries to make it look like. And I think that in itself painted a very bad picture in terms of how we are taking this issue that must be considered very seriously. Here back at Diamond TV, after that incident, we were privileged to have an interview with the Minister responsible for Green Economy and Environment, Honorable Collins Nzov, because they had formed some form of, what do you call them again, a task force, where there was the Minister of Green Economy, Minister of Information, Minister of Water, to deal with this issue. When we invited the minister to come through to speak on this issue, you'd be shocked that he told us that it's not as serious as we try and make it look. In fact, the minister goes ahead to say that water gets contaminated on a daily basis. And the metals that have gone into the Chambeshi River and the Kafue River are not extraordinary metals that that we must begin to build a huge debate about. In fact, he went ahead to explain to us that government, together with cyanometers, are working together to ensure that the water was safe. And in fact, at the time that we had this interview with the minister responsible for green economy and environment, he assured the country and the nation that the water is safe for consumption and that there's no need for us, to worry. But I think we've seen that the U.S. has continued to speak around how serious this issue is. Whilst on one end, government, like you rightly put it, there's a sense in which it looks like government is underplaying the seriousness, of this situation. But from government side, CVO, you'd understand, why this is so, because they said, look, we must depend on science for us to be able to adduce any particular form of evidence. And the science that government is getting is that the water is okay. And so there's no need for us to raise alarm if the water is just fine.
Allow me, Andrew, just to quickly, bring in Cheswa. We've got so many big stories to discuss. I think the big issue on this now, Cheswa, is that the U.S. sort of gave their own damning report, which showed the millions of cubic litre of water that said to be contaminated and the extent to which it has been, and the danger obviously is lead poisoning or lead metal in this water. We're still awaiting an official publication of a full, extensive ZEMA report. We know that there's been compensation discussed for the people in terms of agriculture, compensation because the soils will not be fit for farming for the next couple of years, and a few monetary packages, lime being poured into the water bodies to sort of just de-acidify them. Your quick take on this matter, Cheswa?
I think for me, Silvio, like Andrew rightly puts it, it really painted a very bad picture, even just about our diplomatic relations with the US. I mean, you're talking about a government that really felt that this was a very, not much of a big deal. I mean, you're talking public health. I think that this was a very huge public health risk for people. I mean, you're talking this major, water stream that supplies water to millions of households across the country. And so I think even just in the minister's ministerial statement in Parliament, remember, and I'm just going to read out quickly what he says, the minister emphasizing, underscoring that the affected areas remain environmentally unstable, and that residue contaminants could pose serious health risks to people and livestock. He also warned further that against premature disturbance of soils that might reverse restoration efforts, stressing the importance of careful, ongoing work. That's just part of what the minister in Parliament was saying. But I think, by and large, the Zambian government, I think, needed to do much work in assuring that, yes, this was a damage, yes, there was a problem, and they really just needed to rectify it. I think the US also were playing their own role in ensuring that there is, the public is safe, the water is safe, and that there was, the US is largely also contributing to, to public safety in terms of water and so on. I mean, you're talking the SDGs around water and so on. So I think that government largely needed to do quite a lot of work in making sure that the public was safe.
Interesting on that. Thank you, Cheswa. From one environmental crisis to the next, stemming from 2024, government through the president declared the climate change issues that brought about a drought. And now I want to talk about energy, because stemming from that declaration of a national disaster, Zambia has faced one of the worst droughts ever since the 1900s. But then Malama, life seemed to have shifted into a bit of a new normal for Zambians at the beginning of the year. 2 to 3 days without power in homes. Businesses were disrupted. Costs of doing business and operations went high. Businesses closed. But then we had on this platform, Andrew, if you remember, an interview with the Minister of Energy, Costa, who told me that certain areas in Zambia or in Lusaka were receiving up to 10 hours of uninterrupted power. And I remember taking him to task in terms of whether he came from planet Mars or Venus, because that was not happening. But I think, colleagues, some of you will attest, and I'm told now that the minister is boasting to say he's being called Minister Malite because he's supplying homes with uninterrupted power for the last couple of months. Can we confirm that people are having more than enough power? Malama?
This one's always such a personal thing for me, especially because I think if I look back 2 years ago to, what we're experiencing now, for I think the residents of Chilente can attest the fact that we barely had load shedding. I think we are currently experiencing the load shedding that people get to talk about, and it's so bad. I had no idea how terrible it was until they put us on the schedule. And Sylvia, I don't know. I don't know how to have this conversation and be politically correct sometimes, because it's so annoying, because you keep hearing statements after statement, but then what's happening on the ground is something completely different. You would hear of how, power is being regulated, or certain areas have more power because of, sensitive or essential buildings and so on. And I'm like, but Andrew's had power for 5 days and he doesn't live near an essential something. It's there was a lot of mistrust in the communication between the ministries, ZESCO, and citizens. So I don't know, Sylvia. I'm in a bit of a limbo with this conversation.
Andrew, the issue was clawing back, power that we're exporting. I think that was the major contentious issue, and power exports. The big question for me now are our water sources or our hydropower stations full enough? I think the president has said he made a trip into Zimbabwe and made a negotiation. Where is this power coming from now, miraculously? Are we able to get correct information why all of a sudden there is power in abundance? I mean, the solar investments, yes, we are aware of a 100-megawatt project in Chisamba. We are aware that there's a core upgrade happening at Mamba, though that hasn't yet come to fruition. Where is this excess power coming from?
Remember, Silvio, that in February, President Hakainde Hichilema had an ambitious target of ensuring that the country has 1,000 megawatts by December. And now, he wasn't speaking that from the blues. He was speaking that from a point of knowledge. He had known in the background that there's a number of projects that have been undertaken across the country to ensure that we reach that 1,000 megawatts of solar by December. In fact, if anything, there was conversations around load shedding getting to end by December. We heard this from ZESCO. We were speaking to the ZESCO board chairperson, Mr. Vixon Ngube, who had projected that if all things are held constant, by December, the load shedding situation could have drastically reduced. And you're speaking from a point of knowing that there's a number of projects that have been undertaken by ZESCO and by government, and the gestation period will take by December for them to be completed. The ambitious goal of producing 1,000 megawatts by December, because we're in December already and in the next 4 days we'll be crossing over to January, hasn't yet been realized, but there's so much that government has done, to ensure that we at least have some form of power. You're right to say that miraculously, we seem to have power in our homes. I don't see it as a miracle, Silvio. I see it as the hard work that government has been put in place in the background to ensure that our homes have power. You had an interview 4 or 5 months ago with Minister responsible for energy, Makozo Chikote. And I think that interview was one of the interviews that had gone viral. I think for the whole week, people were discussing this interview, that it even prompted the minister to make a ministerial statement on the electricity situation in the country. Now, in this interview, what came out to be very prominent is when you asked him, you are shocked, Silvio, to hear from the minister that low-income communities are receiving power of up to 21 hours. You asked him, are you living on the same planet as I am? And he said, yes, I'm living on the same planet, Costa. Why? Because it was true that government had a strategy to ensure that it gives low-income communities power. Now, why this strategy? So government had recognized the fact that it is in these low-income communities where we have a number of small businesses that were dying. And there was a consistent complaint that came through, and government responded in the affirmative. Now, coming to the question that you've asked, Silvio, to where this power is coming from. Like I mentioned earlier, this power is coming from the projects that government has been embarking on the past 10 months, and drastically we've seen load shedding reducing. I'll give you a practical example in my area. I'm having consistent power for 4 days, and if power cuts, it's only cutting for 3 hours. Now, this is consistent with many other areas across the country. The government through ZESCO hasn't come out, to explain what's happening. What Minister Chikota has only said is that they're doing something in the background as a pilot project to see the stability of how this is going to work out. They don't want to be excited to mention that we've drastically reduced load shedding, because when again we go back to having power for 3 hours, then you call them liars. And so Minister Chikota in his mind is saying, I will not go out to the public as of yet to explain what exactly we've done in the background, but there's so much that has been done in the background. And you're right to say that now he's even boasting to say, I'm now being referred to as Minister of Electricity, because he used to call me Minister of the Dark, Minister of Light rather, as opposed to Minister of the Dark, which is true. And I'm just hoping that we get to a place where we speak of load shedding normal. But also this has it has come with its own backlash, CVO, that some people are stating that the only reason for why you're giving us Malaiti for 4 days is because we are now getting to an election. And so it has become hard for people to believe that the reason for why they're having power for 4 days is because government has been doing so much in the background. They believe that the only reason for why this is happening is because of an election that we have, next year. And I think for me, this is one area that government must come out in the open to explain to the people. Explain to the people that it's not because of an election, but it's because of what we've been doing in the background. That's the reason for why we're at this place.
And what we're doing in the background looks like this, like this, like that.
Yes.
Because now it's so tricky, or, one leg in the water, one leg in the fire kind of situation, where you have a government that is saying, oh, look, we're doing something, but we can't tell you right now. And yet that on the ground, people are not happy with your leadership. People are not happy because, power situations, the cost of living is high. And you still think it is okay to keep information to yourself. That is wild, absolutely wild. They need to come. They may not give the people the nitty-gritties, but explain something to people so that it doesn't look like, the UPND administration is trying to bribe people with electricity.
But I mean, just to pitch in also quickly, public perception is what's at play here. Many people, especially politicians, will ride on the fact that, yes, you are only 6 months away from the election, and so you're trying to, play politics and stabilize the situation and so on. For example, the president has talked about how government has managed to stabilize the kwacha against the dollar. You heard him talk about that at the presser. So I think also it's just the information. The minister government needs to constantly give people accurate information. Yes, he told us that low density areas will get much power, but now it's like there is equality in how people are receiving this power. So what is happening? People, I think, need to explain all those details to people. So I think also public perception here is still at play.
Well, just because you live in Mayadi doesn't mean you can't afford solar, right? You can't afford solar.
The issue, like has been rightfully outlined, is if we're going to an election in August, and this could be part of the ploy, let's see how sustainable this is, whether it is from hydro. But what the president has been saying is, obviously, we have not done enough diversification in terms of energy sources. So there is a mix of solar, there is a mix of wind and other projects. But let's take a recap of the interview that we did with the energy minister then. And obviously, we should be talking to him soon in 2026 to demystify this myth of really where this energy is coming from and what the sustainable plan is.
At least not less than 10 hours.
In a day?
Yes.
Which Zambia is that, Minister?
This Zambia. You can call anybody from Kanyamba. Who will tell you?
When last did you drive around to find out if that were the case? Maybe ZESCO is lying to you.
No, it's not like, I get feedback. If you have got a friend in Kanyama, you ask them, how much power are you receiving?
Minister, I live in Woodlands and we receive 3 to 5 hours of power per day.
We have, Woodlands is not a compound.
But I'm a citizen.
You are a citizen.
I'm here in Rhodes Park and we're running a business. We don't receive more than 5 hours of power in a day, Minister.
Let me tell you, Costa. We need to agree that we have structured the areas. the compound, the less privileged, where we are finding our people in Soweto, there and so forth. We are providing not less than 10 hours. You people who, at least Costa, you can put a rooftop solar. You.
No. From that clip, obviously there were some other interviews we did. I quickly want to talk about, we're still going to talk about bigger issues. Constitution Amendment Bill number 7 is now law. It's been assented as part of an amendment to the Constitution. The big story in June, on June 5th, we lost President Edgar Chagwa Lungu, an unexpected turn of events. But just before that happened, remember that there was the United Kwacha Alliance called UKA, then there was a breakaway from that into the Tonse Alliance. And there was that big talk of what was called Plan B, that President Edgar Lungu, even despite being deemed ineligible by the Constitutional Court to stand in 2026, there was this big Plan B and a consortium of civil society, not rather opposition political parties. We had an interview with Tonse Alliance spokesperson then, Sean Tembo, and Andrew, you may want to comment on that particular interview on Costa.
Well, we had an interview with the PEP president, Sean Tembo. Quite an interview that we had. We had to cut the interview. Not really cut the interview because the interview had come to an end. But I think it was a heated interview. You are the one that had the interview, CVO, with the PEP president. This interview went viral on social media because of what you had said. We had done the interview for, initially, the Costa program must run for 50 minutes, but we did that interview for 1 hour, 10 minutes. It meant that we gave him an extra 20 minutes, to finish off what he wanted to say. But I think what Silvio did was to say, if the both of us can't agree, then we'll have to end the interview here. It was one way of checking out, but I think the public interpreted it as, Costa curtailing the guest, Costa finishing the interview before it ended, when in fact not. I remember very, very vividly how there was a bit of a back and forth between Costa and Sean Tembo when Mr. Mwansa was trying to produce facts of what was on the ground. Mr. Tembo was disputing the facts even when the facts were there, and so that caused a bit of a bit of an agitation between the two of them. And I think if you look through the comments on social media, people started commenting that the person who's supposed to cross-examine is being examined as well, and so it was a very interesting interview. But in that interview, he revealed so many things that we have gotten to learn today in terms of the inception of the Tonse Alliance. I think he gave us a background to that. He said that, look, he was one of the key people that started the Tonse Alliance after UKA failed. They said we needed a special purpose vehicle that will enable President Edgar Lungu to contest the elections, of 2026, and he needed then to speak to different people. And one of the people that was first to be engaged was political advisor to former President Edgar Lungu, Chris Zumanizimba, and so himself, Chris Zumanizimba, and NCP President Peter Chanda, start to agree on this alliance called the Tonse Alliance. Then they began to recruit other political parties to come into this alliance. And then we saw the birth, of the Tonse Alliance. That after its formation, on the day that it was announcing its formation, it also endorsed President Edgar Lungu as its candidate for the 2026 general elections. So that was the beginning of Tonse. But also, he mentioned that the reason for why Tonse was formed was because of these party wrangles that are happening in the Patriotic Front. The Patriotic Front, from 2022 until date has found itself in a leadership vacuum or leadership crisis, if you like to call it, where they have been fighting for the party. Right now, the issue is still in court, and I think I'd projected this CVO even when that extraordinary, meeting happened that Mwansa had at the Radisson Blu. I'd mentioned when I went to court and Brian Mundubi, I'd mentioned that I foresee a situation that this will prolong until the 2026 general elections, to be like the MMD situation. And true to that, we're getting into 2026 without the Patriotic Front having to fix their leadership problems. And how has this affected them? From 2022 until date, they have not participated in any election, in any by-election as Patriotic Front. They've been using a special purpose vehicle of the Tonsi Alliance, and that by then was the NCP before it left Tonsi Alliance. And so that was one of the interesting interviews that we had this year. And for us to just refresh our memories, Silvio, perhaps we can cue in this particular interview.
Thank you so much. So that encounter with PEP President Sean Tembo, obviously a matter of transparency, accountability, and bringing people to order. We will also be looking at another interview that we had with the Permanent Secretary in the Ministry of Information and Media, Mr. Tabu Kawana, calling us out for being notorious, for asking why freedom of expression was being curtailed on many other aspects in terms of citizens expressing themselves. Let's take a look at this.
Wisdom and popularity, the best thing for the Zambian people.
I have not
issued a verse.
I have not. But I'm asking and you're stopping me. I'm asking. Maybe you don't like the way I'm asking.
Yeah.
But
you're being simplistic.
I'm asking. No, you've told me. I've asked you why Edgar. You say he's the most popular.
Yeah.
So I'm asking.
Among other variables.
Is popularity the solution to the current
You should
energy
have to
crisis?
say, are there other variables?
Popularity the
There are other variables.
The current high cost of
There are
living.
other variables.
Because Edgar has not given us a roadmap
There are
on
other
how
variables.
to alleviate the current situation.
There are other variables, Costa. For instance, Dr. Edgar Chagwalungu is the most experienced leader in Zambia as we speak today. You understand? Everything that you are seeing being mismanaged by the current administration, he was there. He managed it. You understand? Despite COVID, despite drought, he managed the prices of fuel, He managed the prices of mini meal, He managed the exchange rate, So these guys don't have COVID. They don't have any huge natural disaster issues. But they are faring.
Is drought not a huge
You keep interrupting
No, but
me,
I need to.
You're acting more like I'm speaking to the UPND Secretary General.
No, with all due respect. With all due respect.
Yeah.
No,
That's the way you're acting.
with all due respect, I would not allow you to brand me as a cadre.
No, I'm not saying you're a cadre. I'm saying you're acting like a cadre.
No, but if I keep you accountable, is it true?
You're not keeping me accountable. You are arguing with me and you are not allowing me to explain.
No, but when you say...
If I was having this discussion with the UPND Secretary General, then maybe I would understand.
Let's give it
But I'm having this discussion with you.
Are you being honest as a Zambian when you say there's no natural...
Cheswa, very quickly, I want to bring you in on an issue I touched on earlier. It's now almost 6 months coming out of June 5th when we received that news on the passing of the only past president in Edgar Chagwalungu. As of 23rd of December, the South African Supreme Court has granted leave to the Lungu family to appeal the earlier decision of the court. And sad enough that 6 months down the line, the soul of President Edgar Lungu has not been laid to rest. As a Zambian, as a scribe, what is your reflection on this sad piece or turn of events, really, that the body is still in a morgue? There's a diplomatic, spat happening off Zambian soil, that everything has to be taken to court in South Africa, and the family and the government still at odds to agree on the body to come back.
I think it's quite sad, as a country, that 6 months down the line, we have a former president still not buried. And I think the expectation really from many were that the family were going to come to terms with government. And if you look at what seems to be the elephant in the room, if you look at what seems to be the disagreement, is on the attendance, on who must attend this funeral. That seems to be the biggest issue here. And I think what the family has rightly put forward to the Zambian people is that they do not want President Hakainde Hichilema to be where they're close to the casket. Different versions of the story will suggest that he must not view the body, he must not be must attend the funeral of President Lungu. And this really presents sad reading, because now the political atmosphere is getting even more intense, and people now suggest that we could be now even going into the next election while the former president has not been buried. There's a lot of uncertainty within the Patriotic Front, to say the least, because what seems to have been the plan B is no longer there, and I think it presents a very difficult situation for the Patriotic Front going into the 2026 election, because it seems everything is on standstill. We have seen what's going on with different factions within the Patriotic Front, but I think the death of President Lungu also has sort of put an end, not put an end, but it's sort of given the Patriotic Front a very difficult dimension of how to get into the next big election. Because, I mean, really, this is not going to be a small election. I mean, they've got not majority, but more of the members of parliament from the Patriotic Front. And so it will be really interesting to see what this election will look like. But I don't think that we should have gone 6 months without having to settle the dust around our former president.
Moving forward, obviously, Malama, now, I can't even say moving forward, because the barrier has not been, undertaken. The body has not been laid to rest.
Yep.
Pretty sad for a country that is known to be peaceful, democratic and mature. But when you look at the Patriotic Front, whether they will still contest in this election, people are saying, it's when you look at what's currently happening, drama and confusion. We saw the family spokesperson now coming back from South Africa. He's being nicknamed Malukula, contesting the PF presidency. You have others like Brian Munduile. Bachimba Kambwili is back after being given or granted bail from his incarceration. Then the acting president as well, throwing in his name into the race. You have Mr. Chabinga. So all this sort of, storm in a teacup. What do you make of all these happenings and your interactions? You've been speaking to quite a number of officials within the Patriotic Front this whole year on Diamond Breakfast.
I think it would have just been easier had the late president just endorsed a candidate before he passed. And the lack of, I think for me, is also very telling. Is it that maybe ECL did not see who could carry the vision of the party? Why did it take so long for him to just endorse a candidate? Were people in his ears telling him that maybe he need to run again and, all of that, even despite what we saw with the courts and so on? We've had such the drama with it. It just always makes me wonder, why did he just not endorse a candidate? And it just leaves me with the question of, is there not a person within the Patriotic Front that ECL trusted or that he saw could carry the vision of the party? That for me is the question that I have every time I sit and we have these interviews with, whether it's people within the key wings of the party. And when you listen to the divide, it makes you wonder, do these people even have one language? Do they understand what the vision then was of Michael Sata, one of the founding fathers of the Patriotic Front? Is there that understanding? We took a visit to the grave, to his grave. I encourage members of the public to go there. And he had the 10 Commandments plastered all over the wall in his mausoleum. He's got Bible verses, and even the message on his tombstone is so profound. I just can't go remember it now. But it just made me wonder, looking at that, do the members within the Patriotic Front understand what that party meant to its forefathers? I think maybe once they answer that, we might see a change in how they decide to carry on the party. But looking or speaking, with candidates, with those with interest, different wings of the Patriotic Front, I think it leaves more confusion. I mean, if they're confused, I don't know how we can make peace of anything.
Maybe just to add something, Silvio.
As we move on, sorry, Andrew, for the sake of, we've got so much ground to cover. It failed in 2021 or 2020 as Bill 10, and in March of 2025, Minister of Justice Princess Kasune laid onto the House of Parliament Constitution Amendment Bill number 7, probably the most protracted and contested constitutional process of all time that Zambians can remember. The matter was petitioned by civil society organizations. The church went to the Constitutional Court that made a ruling in the famous case of Celestine Mukandila Munia Zulu, versus the Attorney General, and the court ordered that an all-inclusive amendment process be undertaken. We saw the formulation of a technical committee that sat in what others feel was a rushed constitutional process. They came up with a 174-page document or report, which they handed to the President. Parliament voted unanimously for Bill 7, which has finally been assented as part of Amendment Act number 13 of 2025. But before all those events, we had Mrs. Kasune, the Minister of Justice, on this particular platform. Very interesting discourse. Just before the vote was taken in Parliament, we also had a debate on a special edition of Costa between two state councils in Sakwiwa, Costa and Mlambo-Haimbe. Let's just recap on those two interviews for a while.
Laz responded, this proposal is similar to what was contained in Clause 11 of Bill 10 of 2019, which ultimately failed to pass. We know one of the biggest reasons. You locked yourselves up at Community House to actually abscond the voting of Bill 10. And I had an interview with President Hichilema then asking in particular about Article 52.6, and he answered me. It's on record, the video is out there. He said he sees nothing wrong with this article. It should stay as it is. Why should it change? So what is the change of heart now? What is the change of position?
First of all, what I have tried to emphasize, Costa, is that a constitution is a live document. Yes, it's sacred in the sense that it is a national document, but it is a live document.
When it suits you?
When it suits the situation. So
why does it? So it's the contents of the Constitution have not changed. Only the time has changed that now you're in power. So how does it suit you now?
I don't think it's about suiting us. It's about saying, do we want a situation where we have to continue refiling when a member who may be sponsored or...
But this is what you said was okay with you when you were in opposition. This is what you said as UPND. You said you saw nothing wrong. It was okay.
Well,
so what has changed now? How does it suit you?
The president having said that, and I'll leave you to have that conversation with him. But where
it's there, Minister. It's there, and it's on record.
I will not argue with what is on record.
And in fact, not the president. You rejected Bill 10. Clause 11, which stated this as UPND. Why now do you support it?
I think we did just say no to a few clauses, not just that one. But the reason why where I'm sitting, especially as Minister of Justice now, I have a more bifocal lens, I guess, if you may call it that, to look at it to say this can disrupt the nation's security. This can put us in a situation where a president can continue using that system, or just people who
So
are
you didn't see it back then?
Well, I wasn't Minister of Justice.
No, but as an MP,
Okay.
you were in Parliament.
I was in Parliament.
You didn't see this then?
Well, I didn't say it personally. I have to accept that if I'm going to be honest. But where I'm sitting from right now, that is a gap that we need to fix.
So you agree that as UPND, you threw the baby with the bathwater in terms of Bill 10 because you were rejecting it because it was a PF bill and not because you were genuinely, as people's representatives, looking for what is good and bad out of that constitution?
You know what? I have tried to read some of what we said no to and why we felt that it wasn't the time for us to agree to that. What you need to remember is that UPND government were part of the conversations in the beginning. What we did disagree upon, that time we were in opposition, I should say, UPND party, it is the things as they progress. We thought that there were a lot of things being added to the bill, which I may not even have the capacity to go through in this evening. So really, I think it is important that sometimes you may look at things differently, and when you sit in another angle, you look at things differently.
So what are you telling? What are you telling? What are you telling?
Is this a good thing?
What are you telling the people of Zambia tonight, when we have to save every little coin towards development? We spent money on Bill 10. You rejected it. You're bringing the same bill years later. What are you telling them has changed?
Not the same bill.
It is the same bill.
It is not the same bill.
This proposal is similar.
Contentious issues, if we look at them objectively.
But you're trying to revise what Bill 10 was trying to revise.
I don't think so. I think there is some departure in some things. You just alluded to the issue of the Constitution, the delimitation, because that delimitation
but this
was not part of it.
This one on 52.6 was in Bill 10. The reintroduction of members of parliament into council, it was in Bill 10 under clause 52 of Bill 10. It was there. You look at the issue of providing for the hearing and determination of an election petition. It was in Bill 10 under clause 30. So
I don't remember that one, but I could be wrong because you have the cited.
Yes, it was providing for the hearing and determination of an election petition. The Constitution in Article 73-101. So we're talking about the time frame, so that what happened in 2016 does not repeat itself.
Yes, exactly.
But even Bill 10, was saying let's amend this in clause 30. So you're bringing the same things back. Harmonization of the term of office for Member of Parliament. Clause 22 of Bill 10 had the same. But this is the same Bill 10 you had rejected.
Did they have the term limit for the mayors? Did they have the issue of the Attorney General and the Secretary General?
No,
I'm just asking you.
Those are new things.
Did we have the definition of the child which has create inconsistency? I'm just saying there is also a
the removal of the term limit for the office of mayor. Yes, this proposal was equally part of Bill 10 of 2019.
I don't remember it.
It was there.
I don't remember it.
Because you didn't even want to read it. You didn't want to read it, Minister.
The point is, I am seated in a position where I am forced to read the Constitution. No, at least for me.
The question for the people of Zambia is
to say why these are things that are non-contentious.
Why are you bringing back the same things which you rejected just a few years ago?
Then they make
now
sense.
They make sense because you're in power?
No, because you know what? The Constitution is a live document. Because just because they were not as live or as needed as then.
But what Bill 10 was trying to amend was that Constitution that you have.
Absolutely. And they didn't garner the support. So now we are also saying.
But you're party to the problem because you rejected the same things you're bringing back, Minister.
So.
How does your position change now that you're in power?
Well, first of all, I feel that some of the issues, especially an issue like the quota system or affirmative action, whatever system will come to, is very critical. For me, you are asking me or you're asking the party. But I am saying, as a Minister of Justice, as someone who has advocated for women inclusion in governance and in political space, that is a very critical issue for me. As a member of Parliament...
Can I ask you a question?
Yes, absolutely.
As a person who sat in Parliament prior to 2021, didn't Bill 10 have any proposals towards proportional representation?
Yeah, it did have.
It did have.
It did have, absolutely. But also we did have things that we did not agree upon.
So if it did have, if it did have,
yes,
as a gender activist, why did you not support it?
Because it had other things which we didn't agree upon. And
Which you decided to lock yourselves at Community House and not represent the voices of the people of Kembe.
By the way, no one was locked at Community House. People wanted to be there because they were agreeing upon. Was it
what the people of Kembe? Was it what the people of Kembe told you to do? That when you debate a constitution on our behalf, you should lock yourself somewhere and not participate in either voting for or not on behalf of the people?
Can I correct the impression of locking? You cannot lock anyone against their will. That would be unlawful.
Okay, absconding.
Okay? Yeah,
absconding by going to Community House.
We chose to make sure that we were together so that we agree on the terms that we agreed upon. Now, I've told you, maybe there is a way of reckoning. It's time for reckoning. Whatever is good that was in Bill 10, we are not ashamed to say it can show itself.
So you're apologizing to the Zambian people that you're now hypocrites who are trying to play different. Because there was proportional representation in Bill 10.
No, just because there were some bills which are found in the commissioner's reports, just because they also came in. By the way, let's give credit where it's due. Even them, they did look at some of these commissions.
What was bad in the proportional representation being proposed in Bill 10?
What I remember, I personally, from a very limited interaction that I had at that time, because I wasn't in this position, so I didn't pay as much attention maybe I should have. It's because I believe that there was more of things added which we were not agreeing upon.
For example?
For example, I think one of the allegations, which I actually went and checked this time around, was the issue that the same argument people were giving us is that the term of the president was going to expand. And now because I'm able to go back to the Constitution, and I got to Bill 10, I said, can you show me where it says, or can I see where it says, because I'm not seeing it, and they were saying it's in Article 30, that the president also wanted the term to be expanded. That was President Lungu then. I didn't find it. So from where I was sitting from, as a person who has believed strongly in good governance, I was saying, why would we want to go back there when we are just coming from a one-party state and now we are saying we are a democratic state? So I think even this time, Costa, my encouragement to the Zambian people, let's read the Constitution. Because if I also had done a good job, maybe I would argue in a much better manner. That is why we have said these are only provisions. Let laws respond. Let people interact. You question people like me and bring others as well who disagree, who agree, so that we see the way forward.
So you took a political party line rather than a view of the people on issues that you're now bringing back, because you didn't fully read. You admit.
First of all,
you didn't fully read. You didn't fully understand.
When did we have the referendum as well? That was another issue.
In 2016,
yes.
It was voted down.
Yes, because
and you had an NDF where people's representatives were represented, and that matter came to you as parliamentarians to finally enact it as per the process.
Absolutely, and we didn't agree upon certain things. I think what is important even here, it is to give credit. In the same vein, we are going to go through that process. If the PF people do not agree, or the PF representative on behalf of their people, they have the right to say no.
And this is where
this has to be agreed upon by the people.
And this is where I was reading this, that for 30 years we've been going to back and forth. You've mentioned the commissions.
That is the point.
That process must protect content.
Yes.
Why should we let a handful of people, 150 of you, that we voted into office to represent us, and then when you go around consultations and we the people submit, then you come again to open this document and begin to disagree with what we the people have told you we want?
Oh.
Did it consider the process of Bill 7 flawed when it said against the spirit of the Constitution? Is the technical committee and the whole process void ab initio, State Council?
Thank you very, very much. And I'd like to state that us as WOZA are happy that President Hakainde, that you accepted the challenge. Even though you found a bit of restraint in coming yourself, you accepted the challenge and sent somebody to represent you. So I take it that what we're saying is directly to you, because that was the whole purpose of the challenge. You being the head of the nation, it's important that this matter is addressed by you. It's important that you recognize that it is a very important matter. It is part of governance. You cannot say that you've got other things to look at when the issue of the Constitution is on the table. It should be paramount by any standard. I think the Constitution, Mr. President, should be looked at as being paramount, because if you look at our country, there's three main things that you have to look at: the flag, the national anthem, and the Constitution. With all three, the people of Zambia must feel to be a part of it. Otherwise, the essence of those falls away. Everybody should feel they're part of the flag. Everybody should feel the heartbeat of the national anthem. Everybody should feel protected and that they own the Constitution. So the flag is like the face of the nation. The national anthem, like the heartbeat of the nation. The Constitution, however, is even greater than all these. The Constitution is the soul of the nation. So it is expected, Mr. President, that nobody would sell their soul. We as Zambians do not want our soul, our Constitution, to be sold. Justin Mulenga, who you played a clip of, I hope that President Hakainde actually heard him. I think that he started off by reminding President Hakainde that this is the most contested, and I'm quoting, those were his words, the most contested constitutional process that we've ever had. That says something. A majority of the people who came in to give their views said that, in fact, they didn't know much about Bill 7. A few said they knew one or two things, but the majority actually said they didn't know. And what is instructive is that you are even talking about people in the urban areas where there's much more communication. I didn't see a single shot from a rural area. One wonders whether the rural area people were even able to have something from that. Turning to the issue of the Munia Zulu. Mr. President, if you read it, the Munia Zulu judgment says in one portion, and I will quote, "Accordingly, we hold that the Constitution of Zambia Amendment Bill number 7 of 2025 was not generated through a constitutionally compliant process and is therefore unconstitutional, invalid, and a nullity." That is in black and white. That is not distorting what the court said. It is quoting directly what they said.
I'll have to cut you there. Your 3 minutes is up. But stemming from there, quoting the Celestine Mukandida and Munia Zulu versus Attorney General, State Counsel Ayimba, you say you have the law that you want to quote for us. In 2 minutes, State Counsel Costa says, the Court says it's a nullity. It's unconstitutional. So where do you draw the strength that this process is legal? Your 2 minutes.
Thank you very much, Costa. And again, interesting that we always have different interpretations of reality. Quite clearly, we can see that our colleagues who are not in support of this bill have got a distorted understanding of the reality. You actually played clips which predominantly were from Lusaka Central. I know for a fact, as MP for Lusaka Central, that the people of Lusaka Central that we deal with and work with every day are well aware of Bill 10. So it may be that in that clip we had a couple of people who, Bill 7, beg pardon, I keep coming back to that because we'll talk about it. But it's important because I know for a fact that we have had processes where we've talked to the people. We have sensitized them about this bill and what it means to them. So you cannot take those that were shown on the clip at the beginning as a representative sample. And by the way, I also want to confirm that indeed President Hakainde Hichilema is very close to this process. But being the democratic president that he is, he has said, let the people discuss this matter. Let them speak to it, and it is equally important with all the other matters that they're dealing with, that we are dealing with as a government. Now, I note that State Council, in quoting what he says is this decision, the Mukonde case, did not specifically mention which paragraph he was quoting. But suffice to say, and again looking at the 2 minutes, the actual decision, which is at page J25, paragraph 56 of the decision, does not speak to any of the matters that State Council has referred to. Maybe he's talking about something that was said orbiter, but I didn't find any of that within the of the judgment. What does it actually say? In the reliefs that have been granted, it talks about, and I quote, we declare that the decision of the respondent to initiate a constitution amendment process before undertaking wide consultations with people goes against the spirit of the constitution. There is no mention of it being null and void. But more importantly, it states in paragraph 2 of the holding, which is what the court says you must follow, we order that the respondent complies with the spirit of the
I'll allow you to finish. Just take note of that. I'll allow you to finish.
We order that the respondent complies with the spirit of the Constitution by ensuring a people-driven process led by an independent body of experts in conducting wide consultations with the people. The question then is, what did the court order? It said wide consultations. It didn't say stop the process of amendment. It didn't say null and void in its decision. Let us be honest with the people and speak to what is actually there.
Thank you. Director, if we could just also beam the judgment on the screen so that we follow. You've been quoting page
J25, paragraph 56, 1 and 2.
State Council Sakuba Squatter, you've been challenged that what you're quoting is not from the judgment. What is your response in terms of why you feel that this process is an illegality?
Thank you very much. It's interesting that my learned colleague states he has read the judgment, and he says that those words I've read out are not in the judgment. The truth of the matter, which he knows very well, is that those words are there. He tried to have an escape clause by saying that, oh, maybe it was orbiter. That is what he says. But as to whether or not those are there, they are there. And he knows it. And that is a fact. Now, the final ruling of any judgment states that this is now what we order.
So those were some of the interactions and engagements on the constitutional reform. Cheswa, I'll quickly ask you to just give your reflections on what has happened now, because as we go into an election of 2026, we have an increased number of elective parliamentary seats. We now have a mixed member proportional representation system coming into our election as a part of inclusiveness, plus a whole lot of dynamics within the proposed amendment, rather not proposed amendments, within the changes that have been made to the Constitution. Cheswa.
Costa, I think I had the privilege to cover Bill 10 and the NDF, some 4 or 5 years ago, and every constitution amendment process has always been, a contentious issue. And I could see the minister, just in the interview we've seen, the minister, Haimbe there, trying to, justify how this process has been, that they have consulted enough. But again, the major issue here has been about not really much on the content, because yes, you talk about things like proportional representation. Yes, many youth want to go to parliament. Yes, we want to see the differently able in parliament. But what seems to be coming back has been the process around the constitutional amendment bill. And you could see that the minister emphasizing that the process was legit. The process was legitimate. It went through consultation. It went through the church. It went through different stakeholders. But people seem to be wanting to raise politics around it. These are some of the suggestions that government is throwing to people, that the president has in fact, extended an olive branch to stakeholders. He's invited the Oasis Forum at State House, but there hasn't seemed to be dialogue based on the fact that there was no the process of forming this Bill 7 didn't seem to have been made properly, and I think this has been the back and forth that's happened. But again, I think government has got a responsibility to put things in check, to assure the people that this bill is not politically motivated. This bill is not being pushed because we are going to an election. Are we going to see more youth? I mean, we saw youth being excited when he was assenting to the bill. We saw quite many youth excited that they will be now in Parliament, but will they really be? I mean, and these are some of the issues that we need to talk about. We were just asking the National Youth Chairman Gilbert Liswaniso, I think a few weeks ago, Andrew, on why they did not adopt a youth for Chawama, and I think that these are some of the issues we need to be looking at. Yes, we talk about youth representation, but are we really going to see these things unfold if we can't see them now? And so really, my reflections have been really there are a lot of reflections I can mention around Constitution Amendment Bill 7. The process really has been quite tedious. We've seen people that have really failed to agree. I mean, you've got a group going to State House, but it's really been tough. I could leave it there.
Thank you for giving us your thoughts, Cheswa, on that regards the Constitution. Now, one particular individual who's been quite consistent, whether it's on the Diamond Breakfast or the Diamond Live, as well as Costa, to give perspective on this entire process has been Council Meluli Malisa, who will shortly just be joining us on this particular platform to give his reflections on this whole constitutional reform that seemingly has casped the end of 2025 and ushers in a new political and elective era that delimitation will need to happen to have 70 more constituencies created as elective ones from the current 156 to now 226, plus an extra 40 proportional representative seats, 20 that will go towards women, another 15 for the youth, and 5 for persons living with disabilities. We'll be joined shortly by lawyer Meluli Malisa.
Everyone wonders why I'm always jovial and happy. Every day, every time. At work, even under pressure. At play, always under control. Even with Bay, I always shine. And today, I get to share my secret. My secret companion, Best Kombucha, gives me the energy but also boosting my immune system as I go by my day-to-day activities. Now you know.
Umubamabamo, watulile ngoma. Consistency enables one to achieve his or her goals. But that responsibility comes with its own challenges.
When that time of the month comes, it's never easy, but I must be ready.
Mukunkala kwangu pano padera, nosebenzera abana. Masiku yanangu, yombwika bwino. Lomba yakini, mbwika lini bwino.
They say you look after wealth, but knowledge looks after you.
In all my years as a wife and as a mother,
something always had my back in painful times.
For fevers, headaches, muscle aches, and backaches, the recommendation is
Panadol.
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 Panadol. Pharmanova, saving lives since 1980.
Even when we are happy as a family, there is just that important family member missing. Hence, we had to do just the right thing. When we are sharing a meal, there is just that important part of the meal missing. Just Mega Pack, a gift for everyone. We are better together. Kukondwela Pamosi.
For still staying with us, we're still looking at a roundup of how current affairs has been the past 12 months, and tonight we're privileged to be joined in by constitutional lawyer Meluli Malisa. Counsel, good evening. Thank you so much for joining us.
Good evening. Good evening, viewers.
I think before we can get into the issues of the Constitution, how would you describe how 2025 has been for you?
It's been quite a ride. Been full of drama, non-stop action. Yeah, that's all I can say. So it's like a train.
It's like a train?
Yeah.
You've been very consistent on issues around the Constitution. In fact, I think we've had several interviews with you both in the morning and in our evening programs. And one issue you've been very consistent about is on how you gave your position on Bill 7 that now is law. You are very clear from the inception of it all that this process, must be abandoned. Bill 7 is now law, and we are going into an election with a new constitution. What do you think will be the implication of the 2026 election with this new constitution?
Well, Bill 7 is now Act number 13 of 2025. So it's not Bill 7 anymore. It's not a bill anymore, and it's part of the constitutional order. So it will be interesting to see how, in terms of the additional constituencies, because we have 70 more constituencies, and more interestingly, the proportional representation seats. I think everyone has their eyes on that one, on how it is going to be done and how the votes are going to be apportioned, and more importantly, how you're going to transfer presidential votes to come up with parliamentary seats. I think everyone has got their eyes glued on that one. And also, I think the president spoke a few days ago saying, is it the president, that there might be need to expand the National Assembly because there's no room for the 112 extra MPs to seat. So for me, I want to see where the money is going to come from. I'm not so sure if it was provided for in the 2026 budget, which was already presented in the National Assembly. So that additional expenditure, it will be interesting where it's going to come from.
You've been one of the people that were very critical of this bill before it was enacted into law. I think watching one of the interviews, you had mentioned that at law, if you're not happy with any law that has been enacted, you can still go back to court and address it, with the court. An interest in petitioning act of this new act?
I don't know. Look, there's a problem there, okay? The Constitution is not like any other law. Okay, that's the important thing. And I, like other people, were critical of the process that was being pursued by Bill 7, through Bill 7, and I'm still critical to this day. However, something has changed now. Bill 7, whether the process was right or wrong, is now part of the Constitution. Now, if you look at Article 1(4) of the Constitution, it says that the legality of the Constitution cannot be challenged on any platform. So the legality of the Constitution itself cannot be challenged. So which means now Bill 7 is part of now Act number 13 is now part of the Constitution. So no one can challenge that, cannot challenge its legality. However, there are some cases which were filed in the courts before, and I think they're still active. So one about Bill 7. So we'll see how those come out. But in terms of challenging the constitutionality of the Constitution, obviously some other people might have a contrary view. I do not think it's possible, given the provisions of Article 1, sub-Article 4 of the Constitution.
I'd like to know from you, I mean, there's excitement around representation.
Yeah.
I mean, 40 represented seats, that depending on how a candidate performs, you get 20, gets the majority and so on of the breakdown of mixed member proportion representation. What I'd love to get from you is, do you see this actually, benefiting these groups? And I'm talking about women, youth, and persons with disabilities. And mind you, persons with disabilities only have 5 seats. So I can only imagine how also fighting for the things that they want will look like. But do you see it truly benefiting and representing these groups of people?
Well, it depends on how you look at it. It's yes and no. So from the yes side, I would say that, okay, for a start, we'll have a guarantee of women, at least 20 women. Now, you're saying 20 women out of 280. I don't know what percentage that is. That is what they are guaranteed. So in real terms, it's still negligible. One might argue that it's negligible, but it's something. We have the SADC quotas that say that you have to have at least 50% of the women. And as I've consistently said, the problem is not a constitutional one. It is with the modus operandi of the political parties. And you were speaking before I got on here. I heard you talking about, you asked Mr. Leswaniso why they had not adopted either a woman or a youth candidate in Chawama. That is where the problem sits. And it sits with the political parties. So the political parties, there has been no law, even before the constitutional amendment, which was preventing any political party from adopting a woman or from adopting a youth person or from adopting a person with disabilities. So here you have a statutory guarantee sitting in the Constitution of only 20. What is 20 out of 280? What is 15 out of 280? One might argue that it's a start, yeah, but strictly speaking, I think more needs to be done, especially at the political party level, and the government must pass the political parties bill. I think most of these things will be sorted on the political parties bill under Article 60.
2 things quickly. In September, 2 men were convicted for plotting to kill President Hakainde Hichilema using witchcraft under a colonial-era law. The case drew widespread attention, sparking debate on the relevance of outdated laws, the place of traditional beliefs in modern governance, and the intersection of superstition and criminal justice. What do you make of this case?
Okay, it's a very funny case, if you ask me. The Witchcraft Act was passed in 1914. That is 112 years ago. 112. This is 2026. 1914. And we're still using it today. I don't think the British who brought us this law still use such laws. For me, the Witchcraft Act is archaic, especially in a country that calls itself a Christian nation. And it's even in our constitution that we are a Christian nation. We can't be having such things. For me, I would say that our National Assembly has let us down, because 114 years later, we still have an archaic law in our statute book, and it's not the only one. There are a lot of them. The Public Order Act and what. Parliament just doesn't want to do its job. If Parliament were to do its job, please, can you get rid of this Witchcraft Act ASAP? as fast as you did with Bill 7. We appreciate it very much. Thank you very much.
Where must it be gotten rid of? When some people, quote unquote, are practicing witchcraft and want to harm others using witchcraft?
Because it serves no purpose. If you look at the Witchcraft Act itself, what are its aims? Its aims, one, is to punish anyone who accuses the other of witchcraft, and also to punish anyone who claims that they practice witchcraft. So, in a nutshell, the Muzungos or the colonial government did not believe that witchcraft exists. So they wanted to punish anyone who would say anything to do with that. And now for us in 2025 to start saying that we're punishing someone for trying to bewitch someone, I mean, it doesn't make any sense.
Is it easy to prove witchcraft in court?
No, I don't think it's possible. How are you going to... First of all, we are a Christian nation. The Constitution says Zambia is a Christian nation. Do Christians believe in witchcraft? That is the question. Do you believe in witchcraft? If you believe in, how does it come about? So that's why I'm saying that some of these things that we do, we need to do away with them. I mean, we need to move on with the times. Even the people who brought them no longer need them. It was a tool for them to control. 100 years ago, people believed in witchcraft because we were primitive. Are we still primitive today?
Lastly, I'd like to get your thoughts on the Criminal Procedure Code.
What, the proposed amendment?
Yeah, the proposed amendment.
The one introducing expanding the non-bailable offences. Mm-hmm. Look, non-bailable offences should not exist. There should be no offence which is non-bailable, because you have Article 18, I think it's Article 18.2 of the Constitution, which spells out the presumption of innocence. So every person is presumed to be innocent until they are proven guilty. So when you're talking about bail, bail is very much part of a criminal trial, right? And for me, the grant or denial of bail is a judicial function and not a parliamentary function. Okay, so the courts are supposed to assess on a case-by-case basis whether a person should be granted bail or not, right? Saying an offense is bailable does not mean that the courts should grant you bail every time. The courts have to look at factors like, are you going to interfere with witnesses? Are you a flight risk? Okay, are you going to do any of those things that might undermine justice, right? If you are not a flight risk, if you're not going to interfere with witnesses, then why should you not be granted bail?
But part of the issues that must be that is proposed to be added. In fact, we've even seen members of parliament protest. Even the vice president being part of it is defilement. Yeah. That's saying that, in fact, this year, Malama, we've seen so many young people, young girls being defiled, and there's been a call by the members of the general public that defilement must be made non-bailable. You don't think that we must come to this point, all of us, and agree in principle that some of these cases are so serious and grave that they must be non-bailable?
Yeah, the cases are serious. Defilement is a horrible thing. I wouldn't sit here and start condoning defilement. It's horrible. Those people who do defilement, I think they're mentally ill or something. But the solution is not to legislate from emotions. The legislative process does not work on emotions. Number one, the issue of granting someone bail has got nothing to do with the offense, okay? If someone is going to run away, even someone who's stolen a phone, if they're a flight risk, if they're going to interfere with witnesses, they'll still do it. Okay, so there is no connection, there is no correlation between the offense you are charged with and the grant or denial of bail. So when you're talking about sexual offenses, the solution is not on making offenses non-bailable, because someone is innocent. You, if you're accused of defilement, you remain innocent until the courts pronounce you guilty. So perhaps the solution would be, one, to stiffen the penalty. Once you're already convicted, it means you have been proved beyond reasonable doubt that you committed the offense. Then we can look at that, rather than us looking at prejudicial punishment. Because, okay, let's say you're accused of defilement and then it turns out that you're innocent and we've already punished you. You get. So the solution would be, one, tighten, make the penalty stiffer, and also, more importantly, make the criminal justice system flow efficiently. We should be able to dispose of these cases in the quickest possible time. Okay, instead of saying no, we subject them to non-bail and keep them in under detention for 2 years. Why not make the trial process faster so that you get to a conviction faster, and then you punish the person who has really committed the offense? Because mind you, there are certain people who are just accused and they haven't done anything. For example, the president himself was accused of treason, and treason is a non-bailable offense. That case never took off, but he spent more than 3 months in prison. Was that justice?
Councillor Belulu Melissa, thank you so much for making time to be a part of Costa cross-examination tonight.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
All right, that was Councillor Melulu Melissa. He's a constitutional lawyer. We brought him tonight because he's been part of the Diamond team in building, and adding to the body of knowledge when we speak issues of the Constitution. We continue Costa on the other side.
Pascal's showing his boss the efficient new technology they've installed. She is pleased, but now she's asking, why is that still there? Pascal explains that the wells can store many, many messages. The boss is not so pleased anymore. If you haven't upgraded your contact center yet, it's time to get business done better with MTN Business.
Everyone out there knows that our confidence comes from the way we look and feel. And because we all have different skin types, we frequently need a unique solution for all our skin types every day. This is why MediHerb introduces MediHerb Turmeric Soap with turmeric extract and argan oil that has anti-inflammatory and antibacterial benefits. MediHerb Saffron Soap with saffron and almond oil, which are vitamin-enriched with antioxidant properties. Trust in MediHerb Ayurvedic Herbal Soap with 18 herbs and natural oils to take care and revitalize your skin every day.
This is AFCON, my friend. Everything is a competition. Everything.
Join our family on SuperSport for AFCON Morocco 2025, 21st December to 18th January. Available on DSTV and GoTV.
Thank you so much to you, Andrew and Malama, with that reflection on the Constitution Amendment and other stories, obviously around governance with constitutional lawyer Melulu Melissa. As we wrap up the show, before we take a look at continental and global happenings, one of the biggest topics as well was an issue around the fight against corruption. Coupled with that, obviously going into the August 13, 2026 general election, the thorny issue will be around the high cost of living. But we had the fast-track courts, or the financial crimes-related courts, and Andrew, we've seen quite a number of high-profile political individuals making the list, going into incarceration, the likes of former Minister Joe Malanji, former Secretary to Treasury Fred Sonyamba. You've got the likes of Pambashe, Member of Parliament, the former Ronald Chitotela in incarceration, Nixon Chilangwa, Bowman Lusambo, Munia Zulu, Rafael Nakachinda, former, ZRA Commissioner General Kingsley Chanda. A quick comment on that in terms of the graft and, what has been happening before the courts.
Well, that's right. Those names you've mentioned, except two that have been arrested, Chitotela and Chilangwa, were been arrested for, arson, but the rest of the other team that you've mentioned have been arrested for, for corruption. The president was very clear and has been very clear that he is going to fight present, future, and past corruption. Not only, those the only ones that have been arrested, but also those that are close to the establishment, have been arrested, for corruption. And so the sense you get here, CVO, is that there's been, a blind fight against corruption. I think government hasn't been selective, in terms of who to arrest when they commit, corruption. We've seen that even those that belong to the current establishment are in, for corruption-related cases. We saw a report from Transparency International Zambia, putting Zambia at a higher, level in terms of the fight against graft, and I think this shows that there's really a commitment to fighting genuine corruption.
Cheswa, on another hand, you had quite an interactive year with some of these, news sources. You should be missing your interviews with Honorable Nakachinda.
Well, I mean, that's, I think, one of my most interesting interviews was with Rafael Nakachinda, who was very upset, I should say, for having brought up Chilufya Tayali in that conversation, and that's one of the things that we are trained to do, to remain composed, when carrying out some of these interviews. But I think, by and large, I have seen the president talk about the fight against corruption, but very particular, he has consistently mentioned one case, and this has been the case of Joe Malanji. Personally, I really think that the president should have been general when he talks about these cases, because it also puts him in a very sort of compromised position that he had to consistently talk about how he had to call one president from the other to source out information and so on. So the president really must try to remain neutral. And I know that he mentioned that this case is no longer a court, so I can talk about it. But again, it still comes back to the same thing. It really looks like the president was, trying to find cases around, even though he was guilty. I think that the president should have remained neutral when he talks about many of these corruption cases. Generally, I think
have you sorted out your journalistic credentials as Honorable Nakachinda? It's very important that we clarify on this.
Well, Costa, just like we have the confrontations with the permanent secretary who is going to call us notorious, I don't think really we should dwell on Nakachinda's assertions. But we look forward. We look forward to him coming out of jail and him coming back to table some of these very critical issues.
Just before we finally pivot to the continental and global issues, I think one case also worthwhile mentioning was the very famous Goldgate scandal, the $5 million stash that was found at the airport with what was suspected to be gold. We were later told by Minister of Mines it was tin, and how all those private aircrafts were exchanging money and gold on the runway. A case that involved Egyptian nationals, but one that suddenly went cold. Malama, you want to quickly comment on that?
Yeah, I think it was very interesting how this case just went quiet. I think even still, till today, I think it continues to raise suspicion. I don't think it has had a satisfactory conclusion. And well, looking at also just names that were being brought out in this case and how some are linked to Plot 1, I think it continued to bring questions around also those that work, for the presidency and, in the things that they do and how much access they have to be able to do criminal activities, within their own capacity as people who work for State House. So it's been an interesting journey. Some people will think or feel that, not much was done around this case. So, yeah, it's a bit tricky, Sylvia. I'm trying to be politically correct. You know me.
Obviously, legally, the courts or the state discontinued the matter in what they call nolle prosequi because there was not probably enough evidence. But worth mentioning that was one of the biggest cases that characterized the year 2025. We had an interesting interview with Professor PLO Lumumba, a Kenyan legal scholar and professor. We discussed a number of issues across the continent. There's been turmoil, obviously, happening for the last couple of decades in the eastern part of the Congo, the M23 rebels. We saw Dinginda Awajona Buyoya reporting for us in that part of the continent. We saw President Tshisekedi of Congo, as well as President Kagame of Rwanda, going into Qatar. That peace accord called the Abraham Accord failing, and finally it had to happen just last month in the presence of U.S. President Donald Trump, who's made it extremely clear now that his diplomatic way of sorting out these global problems will be one that is of a business manner. He's managed to broker peace somewhat in the Gaza-Israel war. At one point, even contemplating making the Gaza Strip into a golf resort, an estate. And he recently just intervened in the Nigerian war where drone strikes were made onto the soil of Nigeria, and mixed feelings on that when it comes to Boko Haram and national sovereignty. So much happening on the African continent. We've seen a re-election of probably the oldest president living in President Paul Biya of Cameroon. He's now 92. He's been given another 5-year term of re-election. So quite interesting aspects in that interview. And obviously, President Hichilema attending the inauguration of President Samia Suluhu just in neighboring Tanzania when internet was shut down. Obviously, internet has not been the best in Zambia of late. Quick, Andrew, your reflections on that?
Yeah, we had a very interesting interview with PLO Lumumba, and I think he touched on most of the things that you've tackled, but I think back here in Zambia, one of the issues that dominated headlines was the fact that President Hakainde Hichilema, did attend the inauguration ceremony of newly elected president, elected president of Tanzania, in a very quite tightly contested, controversial election. So many reports by the CNN reports that there's many lives that were lost, in this election, and that this election must be condemned. But we've seen regional bodies getting to congratulate, Samia for a re-election, for election rather, because she had taken over from, Pombe, the former president. She was running mate, and then she had taken over with the same constitution that they have in Tanzania, is the same constitution that we have, in Zambia, and so quite. A visit that President Hakainde Hichilema did take there, his message was very clear. It was a message of solidarity, was a message of peace. He was giving examples of Zambia, that, instability anywhere is instability, everywhere. Instability in the Tanzania will be instability in Zambia. Why? Because Tanzania is a very, good friend, of Zambia. In fact, much of the business that we do as a country, we do business with Tanzania, and if there's any form of instability in Tanzania, then there's instability in terms of our oil that comes to Zambia. So the president was a bit selfish, and stating that this particular trip was very important for the country.
Thank you so much, Andrew. Malama, I've been following the Diamond Breakfast, and part of the story is happening in Africa. Trump, really, suffice to say, you cannot wrap up 2025 without looking at some of the most hilarious decrees and things that, President Trump has done. He's created a Department of War now. He refused to come to Africa to attend the G20 summit because he does not recognize South Africa and Africa as an equal, partner. But also one big story you followed, the Thabo Bester, criminal case, and obviously Netflix launching a documentary series out of that. Malama?
Wow, I even so much has happened, I forgot that was this year. I completely forgot. One of the most interesting Bonnie and Clyde African series stories ever to hit the newsstands. I mean, you had a woman who was highly accomplished, being manipulated by a rapist, a murderer, somebody that I guess she fell in love with and, did everything she could to ensure that he escaped. Has been quite interesting in the sense of, women empowerment from that perspective, to also fighting injustices, because you've got a man here who, is known as the Facebook rapist, and you have a woman, qualified, dignified person that has been harboring this person. So there was a lot of talk also centered around that, and how women should also begin to, we're fighting, the predator, and yet you have women shielding these predators. So it was quite the interesting run, I must say, from a love relationship perspective to even just a social story. Definitely one for the books, this one.
Thank you, Malama, and wishing you a fantastic 2026, much coming ahead in terms of an election in August. Cheswa, finally, I know you're not such a big, soccer fan. I would have asked Malama to comment on this. The Africa Cup of Nations is ongoing in Morocco. Zambia plays tomorrow in Group A, or they'll be playing actually against Morocco, the hosts. Will you be watching that and making your dance at the Zambezi lifestyle? Cheswa?
Wow! I didn't see that coming, Costa. But yes, I will. I mean, I think that the first two games, Zambia has performed quite well. We look forward to that particular game, and yes, I will be watching the game. I don't know if I will be dancing, but I would say I will certainly watch the game. I hope that Zambia can make us proud in this Africa Cup of Nations. I mean, I think that the players, the team seems fit enough to perform. I think that they've brought us some good performance on the pitch, and let's see what 2026 looks like.
It's such a very confident man in the Chipolo Polo, right?
Well, I am. I mean, we should be confident in our boys, really. I mean, I think that. They've performed well the first two games. So let's just see. Let's give them benefit of the doubt.
I think for me, Costa, for me is to give my concluding remarks on one of the best interviews that I've had this year that I enjoyed, was the one that I had with Laura Miti, SCA Executive Director. She's also a governance activist. I think for me that was one of...
Davis Mwila as well?
Davis Mwila, but yes, I think for Laura Miti, I think for me stands out because of how a free-spirited woman she is, and also it was because of the fact that part of the plans that we had for Costa, coming into 2025 was the fact that we needed to feature more women. We also didn't achieve that this year. We're hoping that we're going to achieve this as we get into next year. I think we've only had 5 women on Costa this year, but we're praying and hoping that going into 2026 we're going to have more women. The way this interview stands out for me, Costa, is how of a free-spirited woman she is. She was giving advice to the UPND, and in her speech she says that, look, I'm so disappointed with President Hakainde Hichilema that he decides to surround himself with people like Cleson Amasaka, and then she laughs. That Cleson Amasaka surely is a person you can choose to be around you. But also on how she says that there's been very poor communication from the side of the UPND and President Hakainde Hichilema on what they've done. She says that, look, the UPND have done so many things when it comes to the economy and fixing things that were broken, but we haven't seen them come out to explain and tell the Zambians that this is what we've done. They've preoccupied themselves with politics, and this is including President Hakainde Hichilema. And so she was giving advice to UPN that you must now begin to tell people what you've done. You've done so much, but you're not doing that. You have been caught up in the web of politicking with a patriotic front. And so for me, that is one of the interviews that stands out. Another one is of Davis Miller, the former...
Thank you so much,
yeah,
Andrew.
I'd like to also know what Silvio's... I'd also like to know what your standout interview has been, Silvio, before Andrew tells us from January to December.
Well, quite a number, but I think the one with the Justice Minister for me did it. And probably the debate between the two state councils. For the sake of time, really, before we turn this into the Mwansa's show, and not a Costa show, so much to you colleagues, and would just like to say thank you to all the viewers and the supportive followers, especially on our pages, Diamond TV Online. We'll see you next year in 2026, and we promise obviously that there'll be more in-depth and cross-examination as we put to test manifestos and promises for those vying for office, whether at parliamentary level and presidential level, come August 2026, an election that we have. So we expect that there will be so much cross-examination to happen. Thank you so much, colleagues. Have a fantastic, 2026 ahead. Good night.
It's 2026.
Good night.